Just
Welcome to your awakening. Please take all as your reality is adjusted.
just
Yes, hello, welcome. Welcome again, folks. Did I mute that? Yes, I did. Right, okay, so I managed to catch that. Get back to the right page. Stop the screen sharing now. Welcome back once again, folks. Another edition of Sol Excalibre on this moon day evening, the 27th of the 1st, 2020. Hello to people in the chat room. Let me find my YouTube page. Quick type in the chat. I was doing the usual. Was too busy chatting. Didn't notice the time until it was already 8 on the hour. So I'm clicking everything as quick as I can. You know what it's like. It's usually like this each week. It takes me a moment to get everything going and get myself organised because I'm so disorganised. Right, got my notes. Where's my chat room gone again? Thanks for joining us in the chat, guys. Lots of Datro, hello, mate. And Uni Black Sister, hello, hello. And Dave Iron, hello. And Tazzy's in the chat. And Mascara Snake, hello. And Gary's in the chat at the moment as well. So thanks to people joining in the chat room. I haven't seen that show. No idea, mate. Don't watch them anymore. First of all, first thing to mention really is Brexit. It's not going to be far away, supposedly another 4 or 5 days. By the end of this working week, we will find out one way or the other whether it is actually going to happen at all and whether it's anything like what most people think it's meant to be. We shall see as the week progresses and see how things turn out when we get to that day at the end of the month. Saul Bollocks, hello, in the chat room. So just to mention that, because I've got no intentions of really banging on about Brexit this week, other than let's wait and see what happens, if anything, because there's far too many other things going on at the moment in general. Sorry, I'm trying to multitask again at the same time. So mention Brexit, yeah, and we'll see how things go at the end of the week. Come on, catch up. Well, chat rooms are lagging. Waiting for the internet to catch up. Downloading the internet. Yes, right, okay. Back to it. Roberto, hello, mate. Just see you pop in the chat room. And the other thing I wanted to mention, just sort of partly housekeeping out of interest, but also synchronicity that there's been a few of recently for me that just make me scratch my head a bit of like, right, okay, wasn't expecting that until it actually happened and I saw it going. Nobody else mentioned it last week. I didn't want to say it last week because I wanted to see if anyone else noticed the same thing, sort of brought it up. But last week's episode was the 20th episode of this season 3, as I've been doing them. The 20th episode broadcast on the 20th day of January 2020. Just those combination of numbers, I know it sort of pushes the probability factor. And only a few weeks ago, we had something similar with one of the other episodes where the timing of it just seems so synchronistic to the calendrical dates and other stuff going on. We're in the year 2020 and a broadcast episode 20 on the 20th day of January. Yes. But nobody else noticed it, so I thought, okay, I'll leave it for the week and I'll just mention it. Yeah, anyway, to get to the main thing and to mention the subtitle in the info box, the viral crowning. Yeah, I mentioned this last week a little bit. We were talking on the reality chat show on the reality chat channel, which is usually on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. UK time, GMT. The fact that the coronavirus, which, unless you've been living under a rock or something, you're probably aware of the fact that all the media is talking about this new danger, the coronavirus. The word corona and its relationship to the effect that you get around the sun or a strong light source, where you get that corona effect, but also it is the etymological root of the word in the English language that primarily to do with the crown, the coronation and the word crown itself. They're all connected in their etymological root. And Gary mentioned it last week, the coronavirus, it's basically relating to that effect of the crown. Yeah, that had me thinking over the week and watching as the week's events rolled out, and most of the media has been fixated with talking about the coronavirus and what's going on in China, and now also in other places around the world, as it is supposedly, I'm just seeing Gary's shared screen, as it is supposedly spreading around the world. Yeah, that's the one I remember, right? It was, did I do it? Yeah, cream soda. That was always my favourite when I was a kid. And you used to get money back for the bottles, so we used to collect the bottles and take them back. That was proper recycling back in the day, folks. Yeah? You didn't have to pay a third-party company. You just said to people, bring us the bottle back and you get 10p off your next purchase of the same drink. Yeah? And you basically just kept recycling the bottles. But no, they destroyed all that industry and then they tried to bring you back again. Anyway, yeah, the coronavirus, the crown virus. And according to the scientists, the reason why this strain is called the coronavirus is because the way it looks as the actual organism, the viral organism, you can see it in the imagery they use to represent it on all the news reports and whatever. It's got that circular effect with all the little nodules sticking out a bit. It looks very similar to the HIV virus. But yeah, that is supposedly, allegedly, why it's got that corona name. Interestingly as well, mention at this point, because I think all of this links together, and you know what I'm like, I tend to talk in different directions all at the same time. It's supposedly purple as well, and they certainly keep using the color purple in the graphic representation. Not all of them, but I've seen a few where they represent it using purple. That again links to royals, the monarchy, that whole concept of there being a bloodline that has the right to rule, the divine right of kings and all that bullshit. So not only is it called coronavirus, the relation there to the word crown and that concept of the crown, but it's coloured purple, which again is meant to be that colour that the royals have appropriated because it's the joining of the blue and the red. The fire and the ice merged together creates the purple, the thesis and antithesis of that Hegelian dialect to create the synthesis. In other words, they use the two opposites together in that hermetic principle to produce the child, the third, the power of three. And it is that synthesis that they force onto the rest of us by creating and controlling two sides. They give us that false impression that your only choice is the synthesis, and therefore you go the direction they're after. They push you that direction by using those two sides against each other, and you're caught in the middle. Yeah, and this happens to come out at the moment, riding on the back of the degradation of the British royal family at the moment, the Saxe-Coburg-Gothas. And I've sort of mentioned that more than once in recent weeks. I'm not wanting to bang on just about the royals, but it's really that context and connotation of the connection. Oh, thanks, Go. Yeah, that's a good image to represent it. The context and connotation of its connection to this virus, which supposedly happens by just pure coincidence, folks, to be called the coronavirus. I haven't had the time, I haven't had the chance to catch up with a lot of the investigations that many people have been doing, looking into this situation. Shout out to Jeff C. I know I usually mention him every week, but he put up a couple of long videos talking about this over the last couple of days. I haven't had the time to watch them yet, but I know he's good at doing this kind of thing, so he would have dug into a lot of the anomalies or questions or interesting loose threads that you can pull on about this situation, about this virus. And of course, some of the headlines that the media's been pushing around. And there's some interesting connections that quite a few people have picked up on and pointed out, mainly to do with the pharmaceutical industry, but that then links into other groups that are, again, up near the top of the pyramid, what you could call the crown of the pyramid, the upper echelons that have vested interest in things such as eugenics and utilitarianism. There shall be none born that have no purpose. That kind of attitude, that Huxleyan Brave New World attitude of creating people to fulfill mechanized roles within a very mechanized and controlled society. I was thinking of introducing this particular episode with a line, a phrase, because of my usual bumbling, disorganized start, though I forgot to mention it. Welcome to your biometric future. This is now the state of the world as we move forward. I've read quite a few people talking about that concept of the pharmaceutical wars. What we are experiencing at the moment is a corporate warfare between vested interests that have a lot of wealth and power in groups that control the industry that produces most of the pharmaceuticals around the world. That's been happening for a while. That's been building up for a while. And I think I might have mentioned it on Wednesday. What's going on in China at the moment is an example of how they can use the risk, the danger, and the fear based on that danger of viral outbreaks or illnesses, pandemics, plagues, to introduce and enforce control systems onto a society. There's a very, like Gary's showing on that shared screen now, there's a very subtle and direct psychological influence of things like that example of using a temperature gauge that uncannily is similar to a pistol because of its grip and the way they pull the trigger to make it do its thing. Very uncannily, very subliminally connected to images such as the one underneath. It's that pointy finger thing, which, you're not allowed to do in school anymore because it's illegal, because supposedly it's a representation of violent threat. And it had me thinking, all these things going on had me thinking along the lines of this. This seems more about psychological control than actual, potentially, probably genuine danger or risk of viral infection. You can then dig into all the threads and evidence to do with the particular city that is blamed for the start of this in China, Wuhan, as being a center for biological research and development. In other words, biowarfare technology. Even though they disguise it with the justification of, well, we've got to investigate this stuff so we can figure out vaccines, so we can cure people if somebody else uses this stuff as a weapon. But in that process, it's like the nuclear industry, in that process of supposedly creating something to help their own society, at the same time, it conveniently enables the creation of weaponry. Because how would they know how the weapon would operate and its effectiveness unless they make it so they can test it so that they can then make a virus to work against it? So in other words, they have to make the weapon first and then start developing the cures against that weapon or the protections against that weapon. And there is a fair bit of evidence trail connecting that city to that kind of development, including, and thanks to Big Tony for pointing this out, and I know other people have mentioned it as well, but it was from his links I saw that connection back to scientists in Canada being expelled from the country because they had allegedly, they've been accused of stealing secrets from the Canadian biotech development industry and state agencies. So this is not something that's just happened overnight because somebody in China got sick and it spread and it's this new deadly virus outbreak, blah, blah, blah. There's then further to that thread, there's connections to something that was called Event 201. I don't know a lot of the details about this because, as I said, I haven't had time to look at a lot more of the in-depth information that people have dug up about it, but it was a convention discussing the potential dangers of this kind of pandemic outbreak and how the organizations plan to try and deal with it, what they can do about it, you know, kind of like disaster planning or prevention, supposedly. But that event is intrinsically connected to the Gates Foundation. And that then had me thinking about, when they use this same script with the Ebola outbreak, the alleged risk of Ebola and whatever, they use the same kind of scripted fear propaganda. And that again connected back to the Gates Foundation and pharmaceutical corporations and investment groups that had invested into the development of vaccines or other medications that were supposedly going to help against this ever-growing threats from these new viral pandemics that were occurring in the modern age. And more and more that you look, the more and more that you dig away at this, the stinkier it gets. And that's not just stinky because it's a virus causing people to be ill. Just the whole script, the whole propaganda backing it up. And as I know I did mention this last Wednesday, when this began to first come out and China basically told the rest of the world and said, this is happening, look, we got these people that are ill, we're shutting down these cities, we're doing this, we're doing that. And I pointed out the fact that, well, if they're coming out and saying it publicly and they're saying it on the global stage, and other global players like America and the UK, Europe, etc., are sort of joining in the chorus of like, oh, you know, we're glad to see China's doing this and trying to address the problem. That indicates, that reveals an international agreement, even if it's an unsaid tacit agreement, that they're all happy to play along the same script of beware the deadly virus, folks. We got to control what you do and where you go and who you interact with because of these risks of these dangerous viruses. So, as I say, the more you scratch away at this, you see an international connection that links to other major agendas going on around the world to do with controlling population movements. If this was something that well, if they, and they have many reasons to, if the Chinese government didn't want this information to get out, they would have shut down communication about it. And even now, at the moment, there's some evidence to show that they are trying to curtail some of the information, obviously to control it to be official outlet information that reaches the public, not the general populace themselves uploading information. So there's a certain amount of control on it, but it's not been completely shut down. It's not been isolated in terms of the public knowledge of what's going on. It's not completely isolated. That indicates that they're willingly taking part in this narrative, this agenda. From the bits of information about the coronavirus itself and that event 201 and the corporate interests in that virus, it turns out that the virus is already copyrighted. So there's interests out there that have copyrighted the data, the virus, it is basically data, the information about this virus, so that they can then allegedly develop vaccines against it. And that was part of that convention, was them discussing how they're going to develop vaccines and what the progress is, things like that. So this is something that's been quite prepared. I'm doing a lot of bunny ears tonight, prepared for quite a long time. And again, Gary's showing clips, that is an example of possibly foreshadowing and pre-programming the concept of getting some kind of viral infection from international trade. Think about where Jeff Bezos is involved in now, what are the many things that he's got his fingers into, the many pies he's connected into. So there's a lot about this that stinks, and there's a lot about it that looks like the same old script being pushed across the mainstream media, and a lot of the so-called alternative media are running with this same kind of, beware, buy your face masks now, folks. Get your hand sanitizer and your plastic gloves, and, don't go outside. Remain indoors, all that kind of usual fear propaganda. And they have already been planning towards a pandemic such that they've been working on vaccines to work against this danger. Interesting as well, and I know I mentioned this last week, interesting as well that it was the Lunar New Year, which is probably the biggest celebration for the Chinese people. So there were literally billions, a billion plus people were trying to move around China to visit relatives, get together with family, things like that, for that celebration period. By putting out this kind of scare, I call it a scare for now, but hopefully people know what I mean. By putting out this kind of scare, they are curtailing the movement of a lot of people, which reduces the pressure on their infrastructure. And it also gives them, again, that justification to have control points in place to monitor and track the movement of people, to biometrically database them as they go through every checkpoint with their little gun machine. And this one that Gary's showing, I mentioned this as well, the fact that recently China has been suffering from a heavy blow to its pork industry, and a lot of the animals had to be slaughtered over the last year. I think it's been going nearly a year. And it's one of their main food staples, and would have been a major part of the celebrations over the New Year, over the Lunar New Year. All of that connects together to just, again, make the situation stink, like it's been deliberately crafted and enabled to serve other purposes. And one other connection I want to mention on this, because I haven't heard anyone else mention it, but like I said, I haven't had the chance to listen to a lot of stuff. The possible connections to Coney 2012. Now, I know this might sound a little bit of a stretch, but this is often things that I'm looking for, because it's often the more subtle and obscured connections that reveal the deeper roots of what's going on here. Year of the rat. The Kobe death recently, which also has a lot of suspicious details about it, reminded me of the Coney situation in 2012, which led into the Ebola propaganda campaign. There's a bit of a time gap, but I feel it took them a while to build up that Ebola campaign and actually get it trending, as it were, and turn it into the fear propaganda snowball that it was. But a lot of it stems from a situation around that Coney 2012 situation. If you don't remember it, or if you didn't hear about it at the time, just type in KONI 2012. I think, as far as I remember, that's how you spell it. Coney, Kobe. There's one letter, well, a couple of letters difference, but phonetically, the way you say it, certainly the beginning of the word is that same Coney, Kobe. And at the same time, we've got the coronavirus. Even though it's spelt with a C, CO, it's pronounced the same phonetically. A K-O, co. That stood out to me. I know, like I say, it's a bit of a stretch, but there's something about the way that connects. The corona, the Kobe, the Coney, the purple colour. All of these things implying a crowning virus. You then get another aspect to it of the implanting a mental virus into you. In other words, a fear propaganda campaign. You know, the corona is that circlet of the mind that contains the self. It is that outer light, the lux, that is supposedly the everything that is the creator being, God, whatever you want to call it. And your self, your persona, your soul, your being is within that egg. Yeah, that sense of self. Certainly in a conscious self, that sense of self is, for most people, up here in their mind, in their brain, even though it's the whole being thing. But most people in modern society are trained to think that themselves exist inside their skull. So is this about implanting a viral effect into your crown to infect your crown with this viral effect, and that then connects into that controlling people? If you can convince them, if you can put the virus straight into their brain, then they self-police. You get that learned helplessness response, that kind of thing. So is this about the welcome to your biometric future? We are beginning the implementation of the controlling of your movement, your actions, your purchases, etc., etc., etc. And part of the justification for that is, well, if you don't allow us to, you might catch this dangerous disease because somebody might look at you and, you know, they're breathing in your direction, which means you're going to get it. It's going to come and get you from out of nowhere. You know, usual kind of fear manipulation. Those were the main things that stood out to me. The etymological and the colour connections, the global agenda connections to do with controlling people and convincing them of this new biometric reality, this future, what used to be that kind of dystopian, if you've seen the movie Gattaca, that kind of dystopian future of genetic control and manipulation. Well, it's here now, folks, such that you have to worry about shit like this. Corporate warfare between pharmaceutical giants, where the line between state and business, state and industry is beyond blurred. It's smudged. It's almost completely erased. So the state actors are just as much as involved as the corporate actors in terms of the manipulations and the Machiavellian schemes that are going on with this kind of industry, where they will quite happily create diseases and illnesses and then subject their own population to them so that they can sell them pharmaceuticals, which feeds the business side of that cabal. And the state side is serviced by the control of the population, which enforces them into serving the state itself, which perpetuates the state's very existence. The state cannot exist without citizenry to fuel it There is no state without any population. It just is not, because it's a non-physical thing. It's a metaphysical thing. So the state requires control over its own population to guarantee its own survival. And for all those people that are classically what would be called career politicians, and that's just a lower level of the pyramid of control, it's in their vested interest to keep a citizenry within its own boundaries, because otherwise their very existence is threatened, because they'll have no job to do, no payments, no etc., etc. And for those further up the pyramid, there is a much bigger, longer agenda that they care about, and the state system is just a mechanism, a machine to control and farm people for their productivity, for their energy. Yeah. And while all that is going on, if you hadn't noticed, because it's buried behind all this viral porn, Netanyahu was visiting the White House over the last few days, and missiles hit the embassy in Baghdad, inside what's supposed to be the safety zone in Baghdad. And don't forget, not so long ago, within the last few weeks, the Iraqi government, the Iraqi people told the Americans, go home. We don't want you here anymore. You need to leave our country. We don't want you. Go away. And the Americans said, we're taking the oil. Trump said we're going to keep the oil, that kind of thing. So it's not just the viral propaganda. There are other things going on, and there is that potential. Hang on, I'll stop doing the screen share now. There is that potential that the viral propaganda effect is more about distracting people from other things that are happening at the moment. The situation in the Middle East is still ongoing. You probably haven't seen much mentioned in the news recently about it, because the news media has been told to cover the viral pandemic effect. And at the same time, you still got that. I should mention the Trump impeachment as well, because that's all part of it. You could consider him as like American royalty. So the crown virus in terms of the Trump impeachment also connects into those narratives. And also not mentioned in most of the news, most of the mainstream news, again, because it's being saturated with other stuff. But the OPCW whistleblowers, and evidence, a lot more evidence coming out about how the claims of the Syrian government using chemical weapons against its own population are highly likely, the highest probability, the conclusion is that they were faked. And the OPCW has been involved in manipulation of the information, of spinning a lot of the information that was given to them in reports by their experts, and instead fulfilling a political agenda with the way they reported what was happening in Syria in relation to the gas attacks, etc. So all that's going out at the moment. But the news media wants you to obsess over washing your hands and not coughing at each other. Because this dangerous viral infection is spreading worldwide rapidly. I'm trying to be critical without being too sarcastic, because I know I can often be very sarcastic, like some of the dickheads that you get in the chat that come in and spout absolute bollocks, and I'll quite happily be sarcastic at them because that's all they deserve. But in this situation, in reference to this kind of potential viral outbreak, I'm trying to be critical and be objective looking at the information, because I can't say for definite one way or the other, and for a lot of it we're going to have to wait and see what they tell us about, Because if it's really as bad and as dangerous as some people would like you to believe, you know, like the usual kind of fear porn sellers that often say, like, the end's coming, buy my whatever product. You know, there's probably thousands of people now going online trying to sell face masks at a discount and whatever else. You know, those profiteers will be out in mass. But I don't know for definite if it is fake, hoaxed, agenda-driven, whatever. So I don't want to be too overly sarcastic until we see how things develop as the week goes on. But that was the main things I wanted to point out about this situation is there is deeper connections to this. Even if you don't agree with some of my stretches talking about the potential royal connection and that crowning connection, etc., there are still deeper connections to this through the obvious paper trail evidence of those corporate groups like the Gates Foundation that are intrinsically tied to these situations. Nearly every single time they happen, there's little Billy Gates in the background sticking his head, doing a camera bum, you know, sticking his head in the photo. Gates, what's a gate? It's a portal from one place to another. The Gates Foundation, are they building the foundations of that gate? Yeah, that's another esoteric potential connection discussion topic, whatever. The stretch of imagination, whatever you want to call it. But that was about it, guys. That's probably the shortest monologue I've done for quite a while. But those are the main things that really stood out to me. Thanks for showing those screen shares as well, Go, because they were relevant to what I was ranting about. Other than that, I ain't really got a lot to say. I'm sure I'll find something to say. And I will scroll back up the chat and see, because I'm sure I know I did definitely see other names further down the chat, but I wanted to scroll back up as far as I could. Stewie, hello Stewie, thanks for joining us. I know I saw some others. Bright, hello Bright. Iman Pudama, hello. I wonder if the Chinese and other East Asians are subjected to a lot of this fear porn themselves. A lot of them seem to walk around with surgical masks even when there isn't supposed to be any pandemic. Yeah, it is something that's been developing in the Asian culture for quite a while, the use of those face masks. It's considered polite if you are ill, you know, if you've got a cold or a cough or something, it's considered just the polite, good societal thing to do to cover your face with a mask so that you don't infect the people around you. You know, I think that's where it really first comes from, is that kind of social mentality, which is a lot stronger in some of the Asian cultures than it is in the Western cultures. Western cultures are much more secular and individualistic, whereas a lot of the Asian cultures are more collective, you know, like the Japanese. And a lot of their cultural norms are embedded into the concepts of that kind of collectivism. Chief, hello. Yeah, Coney. Yeah, Coney 2012. It just stood out to me with those words, especially with the phonetic sound of it. And reality chat, Pete. I did send you an invite just in case, but I thought you probably wouldn't be set up to join in at the moment. I'm glad your move went well, and hopefully we'll see you online again soon enough. And Stoneman, hello. Konnichiwa. That's another good one. Yeah, konnichiwa. It's konnichiwa, good morning or good afternoon or good evening. I can't remember. I know it's one of the greetings, but coronavirus. Sorry, let me just put that on. Coronaviruses are believed to cause a significant percentage of all common colds in human adults. Thank you, lot. And in that respect as well, it's a good threat to use during winter, because we are still in winter, even though we're rapidly moving towards the spring equinox. But it's a good threat to use because, being winter, a lot of people have got coughs and colds or the flu. So it very much amplifies the fear of, like, oh, I've got a cough. Does that mean I've got that illness that they're talking about on the TV? So it amplifies people's fears quite readily, and it will help, spread that fear virally in amongst the crowd, because somebody will sneeze and they'll go, "Oh, get away from me! You've probably got the illness." Again, self-policing each other. And then we got some sad twat in the chat. Sad twat in the chat. New being, hello. There's a feline coronavirus as well, feared to cause the disease of FIP in cats. I didn't know that. Most indoor cats carry it. Well, could that also be an explanation of why, or one of the justifications that they've been using to persuade pet owners to have their pets vaccinated? Because now your pets have to be vaccinated just like people. In fact, it's probably really more than what they give to most people in terms of the fact that it goes throughout their lifetime, because you're supposed to take them back to get them booster shots and whatever. And it's a good excuse for them to put out information like that to help them persuade pet owners that they have to have their pets vaccinated. And as I learned in my own experience a couple of years ago, if you want to temporarily, shelter your pet in a kennel or a cattery or whatever, you have to have the documentation to show that their vaccination regime is up to date. Otherwise, their insurance won't allow them to take your pet in, that kind of thing. So they can control people's pet ownership. And when you add that into the narrative of them encouraging people to have pets rather than children, then of course they need to keep a track of your pseudo children, your pets, as well as your real children. And they need to make sure that all those biological life forms have the vaccination chemicals put into them. Yeah, definitely. That's another bit of news that is sort of bubbling away in the background and has been for a while now. There's quite a few economic experts, talking heads that have been put across the media recently, talking about how the economy is about to crash any moment now, yet the Dow seems to still keep going up and up and up and up. But they've been ringing that bell of economic catastrophe for quite a while, haven't they? And yet, as I say, the Dow still keeps going up. Countries are still trading. The amount of debt is still growing. Yeah. But now, what are you about catching a cold? FIP is feline infectious peritonitis. Thanks, Nubin. So didn't know the terminology or anything. I think the virus exists, unlike some that go on about it, but I don't think it's anything like as serious as it make out to be. So I'm just reading through some of the comments while I'm going down. I guess you probably figured that out, but I thought it was reading through some of them. Lynn Anderson, hello, thanks for joining in. Work chat room. Hello. Taking names and killing dragons. Thanks for joining us in chat. I'm still scrolling down. Right, I think I've said hello to everybody who's joined in the chat recently. Thanks for typing in your comments. I don't know what's happened to Gary and Days, but they're not talking.
How you doing? How you doing, Cookie?
Hello, you right?
Aye, man, just taking my notes there. I was waiting for Gary to chime in first. I usually hold back a bit, get my shit together. Okay, what have we got here? Right, Brexit. As a Scotsman, I just always thought, I just didn't see the big deal. It was like, do you want your masters to be in London or do you want your masters to be in Brussels? You know what I mean? It amuses me that most SNP supporters are Remainers. It's fucking freedom. Corona, yep, we've got the Crown connections there. Obviously, what's happening with the paedophile Prince Andy, that's been sort of shuffled into the background. Meghan and Harry, you see the deterioration of the Crown, you know what I mean, their power going. Also, the plane crash as well. There was a plane crash in Corona. I think I was in Southern California, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Another connection. For me, what I'm seeing in all of this is the same old long division, summed up with arseholes like Paul Joseph Watson. Like he's saying, look at these smelly Chinese fuckers eating bats and snakes and that. That's basically what he's saying, you know what I mean?
That was just like in the Ebola crisis when they were talking about the monkey meat. Yeah, they did all that thing on Voice and whatever where they said, oh, the only reason they got Ebola is because they were all eating monkeys. Yeah.
Right. In reality, for me, it's more about mandatory vaccines in order to genetically modify us all. They want complete control over your digital footprint, your carbon footprint, and your physical footprint. Yeah. And I say this fucking ad nauseum, guys, so here we go again, right? But for me, it's all about us moving into a fucking transsexual, transhuman, chimera future. You know what I mean? They're merging the fucking sexes. We're merging with the technology. And we're merging with the animal kingdom through genetic editing. I was trying not to mention this again, because I know I do go on about it, man, but it just seemed apt again, you know what I mean? Look, they want us this way, transsexual, transhuman, and chimera, and connected through neural lace to the artificial hive mind. People need to wake the fuck up to what's going on here. An artificial general intelligence, that's what they want you hooked into. And this 5G is going to help. You know what I mean? I'm not sitting here with a fucking tinfoil hat on. This is what's happening, people. Now, more division that I'm seeing with this KO knockout, KO Kobe situation, and it might seem trivial, but it's what I've picked up on. Excuse me. What I've noticed in the American news, like there was an American news anchor that said, "Oh yeah," they were giving him a wee tribute, and they says, he played for the LA Niggers. The LA Lakers. You know, she didn't mean that, you know. And the BBC, they didn't mean it either when they showed you footage of LeBron James instead of fucking Kobe, you know what I mean? They're just like, oh, it's just another darkie, innit? They all look the same, you know what I mean? That's their fucking attitude. Yeah. And Stefan Molyneux, he within hours of his death, man, he was fucking crucifying his corpse, talking about his extramarital affairs and all that, you know what I mean, as if that's the important thing when the guy's just died and his fucking daughter's died along with him. I think that's about it. The viruses. what I'm seeing, these Ebola, Zika, and this one, they're sort of like the school shootings in America, you know what I mean? If they can't get their agenda implemented with one, you know what I mean, they'll just keep going and keep going and keep going, and they'll get you with one of them. They'll get their agenda through with one of them. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. Keep piling on the pressure, keep saturating, because we've certainly been saturated in this kind of narrative for several years now. You know, you mentioned Zika as well. You know, I didn't think to mention that. You got Ebola, Zika, and now we've got this new virus threat. And it never goes away, that propaganda constantly. You've got to worry about what you're going to be infected with next, tuberculosis or whatever. That was supposedly doing the rounds in the UK as well a few years ago. All comes back to the
creating dis-ease in itself, you know what I mean? Just keep people in a perpetual state of fear.
Yeah. And it plays on that misconception that they've given most people. A lot of people go through this kind of mindset. Many people never get out of it. This kind of idea, this desire to live in a clinical environment where there's never any illness whatsoever. There's never any bad times. You know, it's that kind of selfie mentality thing again. Yeah, there's never any sadness. There's never any illness. There's never any feeling a bit, you know, achy or pain. Or no bad can be allowed into our world.
It's so like the Eloy and H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. You know, that's what
they encourage people's idea that they, for example, they can go through the entire winter and they should have an attitude, an expectation of never getting a cough or a cold, nothing. It's not allowed in the modern world. Whereas the reality is, without being subject to some of those things, your body never develops a resistance to it. So when it does get you, it will hit you a hell of a lot harder. So the more they try and keep the viral world at bay, the worse the situation gets within the petri dish of society. You know, look at the situation with antibiotics. The more they've tried to push it back, what they've actually done is create superbugs. Whereas before, we developed an immunity or resistance through a natural process of actually getting the illness and fighting it off.
When you were a kid, you were sent out at 10 o'clock in the morning or whatever, you know what I mean? You're out playing football, jumping the backs, covered in mud, carrying on fighting, a million different things, you know what I mean? My dad used to tell us they used to build rafts, man. They were about halfway to Edinburgh on them and all that, you know what I mean? Nowadays, they're fearing to let the fucking men's out the house, man. Every stranger's a paedophile, you know what I mean? Potential paedophile, a pedogeddon, you know what I mean? They've got them wrapped in cotton wool, and it's a mind virus more than anything else. The fear.
That's why I think it connected for me in that sense of putting a virus into people's crown chakra, yeah, in your mind, in your where you are supposedly illuminated. Yeah, they're planting it in there so that it's there forever. Yeah, everywhere you look, you will see illness because you're looking through. A perception that's been infected itself, you know. It's like a
poisoned world view, as Mark Passio would say.
Yeah, so that kind of old cliche joke of you go to see the doctor, say, "Doctor, I keep seeing spots," and it's because you got spots on your glasses. You know?
Aye, filthy windows. Looking out at filthy windows and thinking your neighbour's washing lines. You get the dirty washing, and it's your windows that are dirty.
It's a stressed situation, isn't it? Being in fear. But, I mean, because the mainstream media doesn't go into certain subjects they're not allowed to. I was just reading that article, and on television the other week, when I was at my friend's, I see that the price of pork has gone up in Spain. Why? Because the 128 billion pork market, 128 billion, that's just the pork in China, has really been hit by this pig flu that they had during the summer, and you add to that the fact that they've had a lot of crops rained out, and perhaps that is, I was going to say, perhaps that's a susceptibility to disease. But you also got to remember, I've shopped in Chinese pound shops, and I know the kind of food that they eat over there. If you think our stuff is bad, you probably don't want to go to China. I'd imagine most of it's processed like anything. But even so, when you got the standard diet that people are eating has been lowered because of the global climate change, then people become more susceptible. I mean, that's been talked about before. During the Maunder minimum, these are the times they had the plagues coming around because people's immune systems were depleted.
and they're more likely to eat anything that's available because of the lack of food supply. They'll turn to eating anything, which means they're more likely to encounter risks from infections or bugs or whatever within that food source. That's what I get. I get the this might sound a bit condescending, but whatever. I get the connection, the context of what some of the media out there was trying to suggest, like the bat soup thing and all that lot. But when you look at the historical accounts of different cultures going through periods of hardship where they will turn to eating almost anything, and there's people around the planet that will eat the most surprising things and consider it normal, and to different cultures, the different palates, blah, blah, blah. But that reality is when a society or civilization is pushed to its resource limit and they start turning to eating any other thing they can find, then that does that kind of degradation effect, because they're not getting the usual kind of standard of nutrition, calorific intake, vitamin intake, etc., etc. So their own bodily systems are degrading, so they become more susceptible. It's a escalating problem. Less food available, more risky food sources, and a depleting resistance to any potential risk within those food sources.
Well, earlier you was mentioning about cross genetic engineering, diseases. I don't think that is really what's happening here, because you said you get used to fighting off a disease every year. Yeah. Well, at least with the common cold, we know it mutates every year. Yeah, it's like somebody that watches, Russell Brand and then starts going around copying his mannerisms because he think it, and then sort of like that starts to pull, and so he watches a new program, starts copying the mannerisms of that person. That's what the cold virus is doing every year. It's changing its face. Yeah, and I noticed with the Zika virus that was possibly genetically modified, but the thing about that, it went out and infected a load of people, but then it pretty much died off on its own. So I don't think they've gotten to the point where they can genetically make viruses that are viable. Yeah. So when they want to make a virus, they have to mutate it out of something that already exists.
Right. Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah. Well, isn't that exactly what they've been doing at these research labs?
Well, yeah.
Their justification is that they need to create every possible weaponized version of the virus. In other words, all the different mutation strains that they can imagine, so that they can develop protection against each of those potential strains.
Well, and I'll tell you, somebody shared a link the other day. It might have been Jeff C. on the vaccine wars. Somebody in China was arrested for selling bad vaccines, and like I said, they had swine flu fever in the pigs in China. Now you're supposed to kill all the pigs that are infected. Well, of course they do. Yeah, it's not like you could just chop the thing's head off, cut it up, and sell the meat anyway. And in that industry, 80% of the world's antibiotics are given directly to animals every day. A couple of pills in their feed every single day, just in case. Yeah, because they're living so closely together. Yeah, if you're a human being, you can't. You've got to go to the doctor to get a prescription, but the animals get fed them every day.
A lot of the cattle get injected. It's not just in the feed; they get in periodic injection regime as well.
Yeah, that is an experimental lab in itself. Yeah, every animal farm basically is an experimental lab. Yeah, see if they can breed something.
I put that comment up from Nicotine because you had said about the amount of pork. 2/3 of their livestock were killed off because of that pig flu.
The price of pork going up here in Spain because you've got the money, haven't they?
Well, a lot of the meat prices have been going up recently. The last year, I feel, you could say this is anecdotal evidence. In my own experience, when I'm out shopping, I can see price increases on various goods that either are staple goods or used to be considered a staple. And chatting with other people, that seems to be fairly uniform across the board. It's not necessarily just that it's meat only. There's been a lot of inflation and shrinkflation, you know, hidden inflation by reducing portion sizes and all that kind of shit. So the food resources are under pressure, even though, you know, then we could mention that into, I mean, Brexit and everything as well. Because now we're going to, if we get to the end of the week and it happens and blah, 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 we're going to see how they attempt to deal with things such as the fishing rights. You know, that kind of food independence. There's a lot of people, certainly in the media, there is anyway, there's a lot of the usual commentary of like, Britain can't feed itself, we don't have the agricultural supply to feed ourselves. But what they don't happen to mention is that that's primarily because a large amount of the agricultural industry has been converted into making produce that is shipped elsewhere in the world. So we're not actually growing food for our own population primarily. We're growing other stuff. And then you get examples like fish caught here get shipped to China to get processed just to get brought back again. That's the level of the interlacing of the nations into that global marketplace. Whereas the reality is there is more than enough agricultural land in this country to feed our population if it was purposed to do that. If the fishermen had access to the fishing grounds the way they used to, that don't have those European restrictions, we could feed our own population. We'd probably have to import some stuff that obviously we can't grow here or whatever, like bananas, you know. Although we could grow them, but it's in such heavily controlled conditions, is it practicable? You know, surely it's better to still import goods like that and trade for those goods. But they want people to have the impression that we can't survive without being tied into that global network, which is the foundation of that new world order global society. You know, things like this potential virus pandemic further puts people's mindsets into that tunnel of the only way we can survive this is by being interlinked into that international network.
That was the whole purpose of everybody paying tax into the common agricultural policy, so that they can move that food around, centralise it where possible, send it back and still have it cheap. So people will always have cheap food, but people trying to grow it on their own and sell it won't be able to do that. You need to be an established farmer under the iron glove of the European Union. They'll be telling you what to grow. Yeah.
Even if you are an established farmer, it's not a highly profitable industry to get into. And if you're a small scale farmer, it's pretty much done. You know, small scale farms can't compete anymore. They get gobbled up by the big monocrop producers and the supermarket funded resource management structures, you know, where they grow crops just for the supermarkets, that kind of thing. I know a few people that have been in farming, you know, done it as a living, and it's not an easy thing to do if you're doing it in that kind of business sense of wanting to trade to the rest of the public. If you're just growing stuff for yourself, yeah, but then of course, how do you fund your own living and whatever, you know, all those kind of questions. But it's not easy for anyone to truly compete anymore because of that global structure.
We require the guidance of our beneficent technocratic masters. It's not enough to obey Big Brother, got to love Big Brother.
Yeah. You got to be you got to take up your role within that feudal structure. You know, you want to be a farmer. Yeah, you can be a farmer, but you can only grow the crops that we tell you to the quantities and quality that we tell you. And if it doesn't meet that criteria, tough shit for you this year. You know, it's things like that. It's basically just there is no way to compete. So you've got two choices: either do what they demand of you and you end up basically just becoming another big monocrop producer, or don't get involved with it at all and just grow stuff for your own use or your own local neighborhood use. And then it's not about being a business, is it? You're being just a producer in that kind of old-fashioned sense.
Competition is a sin.
Yeah, there shall be none outside of the machine. Well, I can't remember this. Is it Stalin or Lenin quote? Something like, there'll be none outside of the control of the state. That is very Hunger Games as a modern reference point for a lot of people that may not be aware of some of the longer history and whatever. Yeah, the Hunger Games is just a rewriting of other older material, and it is an amalgamation of a lot of these agendas that we're often talking about, like Agenda 21, 2030, etc.
Codex Alimentaris.
Yeah. Hunger Games just nicely encapsulates a lot of that into a fantasy storyline, about a heroine and whatever. There's a much deeper message or propaganda thread in that storyline.
It was gladiators, wasn't it? I mean, if you win enough matches, you'll be coming out of that gladiator ring and becoming a Roman citizen.
Yeah.
It's thinking as well with this, that sort of Codex Alimentaris, or however the fuck you pronounce it, like with all these viruses and that kind about it plays into that agenda as well. They have to take total control over the food production and so on.
That then could link us into I call it the Soylent Green agenda. Yeah, but it's the controlling the food supply, which also includes the genetic manipulation of said food supply. They've been after that for a long time. Was it one of the Rothschilds said something along the lines of "give me control of a nation's food supply," and that's all they
Monsanto as well, but no seeds shall be grown that Monsanto don't own.
Yeah, it might have been Monsanto actually. Yeah. I know which one you mean, Gary, the money supply one, but no, I'm sure. I thought there was one about the food supply as well, but I'm probably mixing it up.
And the sort of terminator seeds, or they don't go the cycle and produce more. It's just the one term.
Yeah. A lot of African farmers just wouldn't buy them. They said, "What? We can't get seeds from them for next year." No, and they wouldn't buy them. Straight off. The thing I noticed about the Kobe thing, and I said this before the hangout, it's to produce fear, in people. I think a varied fear that if you're the one, even if you're within the elite, they'll still take you out. They don't care. So and like they put all these messages about it being predictive programming, and the fact that the guy is 100%. He's throwing sixes. I mean, people made whole videos about all the different Illuminati connections of Kobe, and all the different aspects that has already been seen by people and are being dug up now. And the message is, you do what we say, or this is what can happen to you. So in a sense, people are looking at the Kobe story like it's maybe fake, but at the same time, they're being asked to swallow the coronavirus story like it's absolutely true. It's got to be. They wouldn't be lying about something like that. And it's odd to have the two side by side,
with Kobe, it's like the killing of the king ceremony.
That's what I was just thinking. It sounds very much like Gary was saying. It's sort of like, look, for all you people out there who think you're going to get into the Illuminati, it's like, we'll quite happily sacrifice our own. Here you go. We'll slaughter a king right in front of you. We'll give you enough detail so that you can see that it was a manufactured event, so that, we telegraph the information to you so that it was us that did it. But it is demonstrating, again, it connects that viral crown effect. It's almost like they're saying to the population that you are a virus to us, the crown. We are the crown, you are a virus. And if you think you're going to get in here, you're going to break in our circle of the coronation, the corona, no, we will. This guy thinks he's a king, we'll slaughter him. There you go.
If that's what they think it looks like, to me, it looks like that guy that went on the Black Mirror episode where he went up on stage and he's holding a knife to his own throat. Yeah. I mean, because they're scared, yeah? They only do these things if they're scared. And that's what the whole Greta thing was about, yeah? She didn't want us to panic. She wants her own type to panic, the elite. You know, we're almost in reach of the goal, and we got to panic, so we keep control.
Yeah.
Because people are beginning to wake up.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you view that output as in she's just a meat puppet being used to output a certain message, if you view that output as if it's not directed at you, it's directed at the cabal, the cadre of people that are trying to create these kind of manipulations, and it makes sense in that respect of her being like a trumpet, a clarion call to battle kind of thing, of like, we've got to start panicking now, start attacking now.
Yeah, and I saw in the interview of her on Ellen DeGenerate the other day, yeah?
She was on Ellen DeGenerate.
Yeah, and oh man, she had to be prompted. Yeah, I mean, Ellen DeGenerate was there and going, wasn't there something else about and she's like, oh yeah, that's right, my Asperger's, because everybody is on the autism spectrum and it's my superpower. And it was the one where she's saying that, yeah, but you could tell that she'd been prompted and she'd read the script before she went in. I mean, she's basically a pretty stupid fucking person, really. Yeah.
Obsessive.
I think there's a lot of like religious aspects to this climate alarmism, like with her as well. Like, your carbon footprint is the original sin. Okay, you're a cancer on the earth, but don't worry, from when you were born, but don't worry, because you can atone for it through carbon taxes, and that will avert the Great Flood. And here is the young virgin, carrying the message.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is, and there's so much about that right, it's certainly got the cult elements to it. And I know a lot of people don't like me saying it or don't agree or whatever, but all the big religions, the big three certainly, are just like a cult. Yeah, I don't mean that in the sense of the truth that may be at the root of them, but it's been turned into a cult mentality indoctrination system that just demands everybody to join in and repeat the same mantra, the same dogma, and never question the leadership. That classic cult programming. Yeah.
And Greta Thunberg, is not to be questioned. She's not to be criticised, not to be mocked.
Yeah. If you do, you are morally reprehensible, because one, it's a child, and two, it's a disabled or different ability child. So yeah.
It's that their child thing, it's starting to wear thin a bit now. I think she's 17 now, so
it was
beginning to wear thin.
I can't remember who I heard mention it, but I heard somebody bringing up the question of, well, could there be something biologically wrong with her, or could they be giving her or forcing her to have some kind of chemical blocking, like the puberty blocking drugs, things like that, because she doesn't seem very developed for a 16, 17-year-old. And I'm not just talking about like sexualization. I mean, her face is very childlike. She's got mannerisms and a attitude of very childlike. Some of that comes out from the Asperger's, but there's also the biological side of it.
Okay, androgynous as well.
Yes, yeah.
Well, I mean, I used to go to a cafe across the other side of town where they had disabled kids school, yeah, and these were all like 16 to about 20, yeah, but very, very fucking, disturbed. And if there was about 15 of them, 2 or 3 were Down syndrome, but the rest, they was all, really mentally retarded, yeah. And they'd come in the cafe sometimes, and there are different looks of mental retardedness, yeah. That's not Down syndrome, which is obvious, you know it when you see it. And there are other ones as well, yeah. And I mean, they used some of them in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, didn't they? They used some actually genetically retarded people in the cast, yeah, just because they had that look. And she's always struck me as something like that, yeah. She's got that look. It's a genetic thing. I don't know which one, but
in a way that's part of the whole shtick, though, isn't it? You know, they haven't tried to hide it in any way. If anything, they're championing it because it serves the purpose of that agenda.
I mean, if she can learn to read it out, if she can learn to read it out, nobody's ever going to question her on whether or not she actually understands what she's saying.
That's where it comes into the obsessive compulsive disorder, because that can be abused to give somebody a body of information, especially a child who has a predisposed need to believe the adults within her life, his or her life. You know, when you're a kid, you have a predisposition, you have a requirement to believe your parents. It's through bad experience that you might learn differently, but the natural course of things, you have this biological drive to accept what your parents tell you. So if they're feeding her a dogma, her Asperger's and obsessive compulsive disorder would make her fixate on repeating it as rote, as memorized. And as far as she's concerned, she knows everything because she's memorized everything on the piece of paper that they gave to her. So it's just like a computer, rubbish in, rubbish out kind of principle. If they give her a controlled amount of information and say, this is all you need to know, she's likely to believe them, learn it, memorize it, and repeat it by rote. And the Asperger's would make her react with difficulty to anybody that contests the points that she's reciting, because as far as she's concerned, she's spot on correct because she's repeating exactly what was written down. Do you see what I mean? For somebody with obsessive compulsive, they're not so concerned about the contents of the information as relayed through the language used on the paper. Their main concern is memorizing every word, where it is in the sentence, how many sentences there were, how many full stops there are, things like that. Not the actual content of the information necessarily. Yeah, this to me is just another one of those things that I would say this is my personal point of view, because I'm not any kind of qualified therapist to pass diagnosis or whatever. But from my personal point of view, watching the situation unfold around her, is that she's being abused. Yeah, some people might have debate with me using that word, using that kind of language, but as far as I'm concerned, what I'm watching is a child being abused by the adults around it who have persuaded her, they've gaslit her and controlled her access to information such that she's convinced of what she's standing for, even though it's a controlled, limited environment. Yeah,
that's it. They're the people who have stole her childhood that she's shouting about.
Yeah. She hasn't been raised in the kind of, I know it sounds cliche, but the normal way. Yeah, when you look at the history of her and her family and the reality that ever since this campaign started, she's been in pictures, in video, on the media. It's all manufactured. She's just a flesh puppet. So that then brings up that question. That is basically abuse. She's being used by others, by adults around her.
Incidentally, we come across the thing saying that the Kobe plane helicopter crash might have been a complete hoax because, this is the helicopter. If you can screen share that. Yeah, this is the helicopter.
Well, when it comes up, it's lagging a bit for me.
Yeah, this was Kobe's helicopter. And if I go here, we've got the Sikorsky. The helicopter that crashed near Calabasas, California, carrying was a Sikorsky S-76B with tail number N72EX. Yeah, N72EX, Kobe Bryant. Go down a bit and we see this blue helicopter, which is the one at the crash site. That's a bit odd.
Was it his own helicopter that he was piloting, or was it a different helicopter?
Well, I was just reading that in this article, and apparently he's got this company that keeps it for him. Yeah, Sun Valley Accessory, JB Helicopter Accessory Service. They're the ones that look after it for him because you have to park it somewhere. Yeah, so you park it at a local airfield, and there's a company that looks after a load of things. That's not the same one. That's N72E. Oh no, look at that! They've fucking photoshopped it. They haven't all. They fucking have as well, because that one up there is different. And they were saying this is the one. Yeah, this is the N76. Okay. But they tell you his tail number is the N72EX, which is this one. But then look at this thing here. Look, do you think they've photoshopped? Not that one. This picture? Look, there's a little flash across the EX.
Mm.
That's a bit bloody weird.
Conveniently obscured.
Yeah, very conveniently obscured.
The thing is, though, this could descend into another provided rabbit hole. You know, in this, I was thinking about this yesterday as well. Is a lot of the stuff to do with the viral outbreak in particular. It just reminded me again, and I know I've mentioned this multiple times over the last few years, the hyper-normalization effect, where now you can guarantee that every story will have a rabbit hole attached to it because they know that most of the public has now got into this new way of looking at information where we go online and we follow links and connections. And some people out there, some of us, like to follow and dig and look a bit deeper than just the main news page. So they deliberately provide little pockets, rabbit holes for us to go and explore, like the Pizzagate kind of stuff, where there's breadcrumbs to make you feel like you're figuring out the secret, you're finding the hidden info, but really you're just following a chain of links that they've left deliberately for you, like Hansel and Gretel. Yeah.
Analyze the wizard's fault.
Yeah. So I'm pretty certain that, mate, whether this event was true, staged, hoax, whatever, I guarantee you that quite a few people will spend the next few months doing exactly that, digging down every bit of that information.
Well,
It's good that people look into things deeply like that, but at the same time, you have to have that bit of self-awareness of going, hang on a minute, am I just following a cookie crumb trail that's just leading me in circles?
And read articles like the one I just showed you right to the end, because at the bottom it says, the black colours is the way that he used to have it when he was playing, or whenever he bought it. Yeah, but it doesn't say he changed it back in such and such, but they've added that there as well, maybe just in case.
That's Jeffrey Epstein case, man. It's like everybody's convinced he's he never killed his cell or whatever now. They're all analysing, though, this was in his cell, that, and for all we know, you know what I mean, he could have been let out the back door, he could be on a fucking yacht the now, snorting coke and banging wains on an island, for all we know, you know what I mean?
Or Nick's just put in the chat, one is his old chopper, one is his new one. Do more research. Yeah, see, to me, it comes back to that classic situation, just like 9/11, where the system's quite happy if we argue over the details, argue over how it was done exactly, and you have to be able to explain it exactly, absolutely exactly. Every little detail has to be listed. If you don't, then we don't want to listen to you. So they get people, they get people to fight over those kind of details rather than look at the bigger picture of what is this connected to and what is it going to influence. As we move forward, what is this now going to affect?
Because most people's ego, they want to be the one that sees the truth, I figured it all out, Oh, you guys were on the wrong leads. I knew it was going on all the time.
Yeah. They've been... I was going to say I could argue. I don't feel that there is any argument to this. I think it's a given. There's more than enough evidence to show this now because it's been several years. But it's like over the last several years and the whole internet environment and the way it's been switched into that kind of hyper-normalization highway where they knew full well that a lot of people were using the internet as a research tool, an information tool. And that's what I did back in the 90s. Yeah, it was like, oh, I can ask any question. I can look up any information I want to. Great. They got us all used to doing that. And in the last several years, they've been creating this controlled environment where they can treat it like an arena, where they'll get one group to go and follow one personality, another group to go and follow another, and they'll get us fighting over details and arguing whether somebody's a shill or an agent or whatever. It's just continuous chaos and argumentum ad infinitum, which means we are controlled, we are disempowered, we are put into a paddock, into the argument room, as Monty Python put it. Yeah. So, oh, you're interested in questions? I've got questions about the government. Have you? Welcome to the argument room. Yeah. It just goes fucking on and on and on. If you let it drag you in that way, I would suggest, even though I argue that point, I would suggest that there are ways that you can surf that problem. You know, just don't get dragged into those kind of polarizing arguments, because in the long run, is it actually going to serve you in terms of you living your life and making a better world and having a better life and all that kind of good stuff that everybody's after, most people are after? Or is it just going to stick you into a fear loop or a stress loop? You know, Steve mentioned it a few weeks ago, you know, amygdala hijack. And I've often referred to it as how they cartoonify emotions and then feed them back to us with that kind of, oh, are you angry at the government because they've taken your home away or something? Or, you know, they're attacking people in another country and you don't agree with the war. And what, oh, you got that kind of difficulty with our shit. I mean, well, here you go. Here's how you should feel about it. Here's your virtue signaling options. You can do this, this, and this. Yeah, and they created these preformed, prepackaged ideas and concepts, which includes hacktivism or joining Extinction Rebellion or some shit like that. And they just keep feeding it back to us. And people,
Package rebellion.
Yeah. I was going to say people keep falling. I don't want to generalize that much. A large portion of the populations of nearly every nation keep falling for the same trickery again and again and again.
We haven't quite hit that scene in 1984 yet, where you know you can all sit there collectively and hate the screen. There he is, the enemy of the state, and everyone's standing up and waving their fists at the screen. You know,
oh, that was Soleimani a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it? You know, say, I've got him.
Yeah, a little bit of Harry as well on the side.
Side dish.
In a similar fashion, they like to do the kind of grief purging as well. You know, so we get the horror stories, the sub stories, the terrible tragedies, things like, I mean, the Kobe situation is kind of like that. You know, just think of all the avid basketball fans that are going to be absolutely heartbroken that their sports hero has died so tragically. You know, so
this one's for all you grief junkies out there. Hope it doesn't get in the way of your recreational modelling.
Give us your energy. Let it out, yes. Let the evils flow out of you. You know, it's that kind of manipulation.
It's like that every day on the bloody news. I mean, I saw a headline, I think it was yesterday on the Daily Mail, and a guy had been in his car. He had a car crash, but I assume he was wearing a seatbelt, but he had his feet up on the dashboard. So what do they show? They show you the X-ray of the dead body's pelvis. And you imagine a broken pelvis. That's a big bone, yeah? And it's all been smashed. I didn't look closely. I'm assuming it was all smashed up, yeah? But I'm thinking, why? Why tell it? A guy died in a car crash. His injuries are a little bit worse than usual because he had his feet up on the dashboard. Don't do it. But, you know, I mean, with his feet up on the dashboard, it sounds like he might be on a mobile phone, and you can get arrested for that now. The person sitting next to you in the car is on the mobile phone. It might distract you as the driver. And so you as the driver can get, you know, fined for that. Yeah. And somebody Guy Scott put a video up the other day, and I said, Christ almighty, have you seen inside like the latest cop cars? Yeah, I mean, these guys are sitting there with screens all around them. Yeah, that's okay for them.
It's looking more and more like Demolition Man every year.
Yeah, but I mean,
Soon they'll be driverless, and all you'll have is this guy sat in a cockpit surrounded by computer screens. You know, as he's going down the highway looking at your car.
yeah, playing Pokemon with the recognised facial recognition system.
Yeah, and you combine that with the 5G rollout and what's the term for it? The new motorway system, the smart motorway. Yeah, then there's not going to really be a lot of police cars on the motorways because they'll have stations every so often along those smart motorways.
All this smartphone, smart TV, smart grit. Remember the other connotation of the word smart? A sharp, stinging pain.
Yeah. Slap you in the face. Hello, Supreme Lord Commander. Just saw you in the chat, mate. Hope you're right. I think they're coding the coronavirus in Kobe. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Right? That's kind of what I've been ranting about. The crown virus, the corona, the crown, the viral effect, and the Kobe crown, the crowned king of basketball. That's probably what it's going to end up being called now. You know, things like that.
I think it, like I say, it ties on to the Max thing. Yeah, when Max said, "I'm the one," and they come after the one. Yeah, and then he recovered within 24 hours.
Yeah.
I noticed a Benny Wills put up a video saying, "I've been a friend with Max now for years. You know, he spent three months living with me." And I thought, well, why didn't he fucking phone you the night that you got flashed by this lightning? Yeah, I mean, didn't he have somebody you could call? Isn't that what you do? If someone said to you, "Oh, I'm not going to talk to anybody on Skype or on the telephone or anything. I'm just going to go and make a video about my vision." You know, I think you'd want to talk to somebody if something like that really, truly happened.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't want to make a video to put up on YouTube talking about it.
Maybe that was the impulsion that was placed into him by the CIA mind control beam.
No, that's just a fucking bullshit cover story for why he did it. I'm still convinced that he did it to get attention and to grab that movement, the flat earth movement, and appropriate their energy.
Yeah, and here's another thing. It was definitely not the intelligence services coming to him and saying, "Look, Max, you know, we don't care, you know, you want everybody to wake up and be hippies." Well, that might happen one day, but you can't go calling people out to do acts of violence. You're going to have to put a video out discrediting yourself. Now, if that had happened, okay, maybe. But he certainly wouldn't have come back with a video denying it all the second day after, because he just would have got another knock on the door.
Exactly.
So it was not threatened. It was not threatened.
That's what I think. It can't be from a threat to life, because otherwise he wouldn't be able to give the game away or recant his statement, which he's since done. You know, he's been recanting it. He hasn't done any videos.
I think the backpedaling's more to do with tying psychosis to having an alternative view.
Yeah, could be. But, you know, again, we're analysing a wizard's fart, trying to figure out his real reasonings, because he won't be upfront about it. So, you know. And he is just another YouTube personality, an internet personality. So I think I've spent enough time talking about that situation. My attitude with it now is I'm going to wait and see what he puts out. And if he carries on down the same route, he's going to end up going the same direction as Bonacci, which means pretty much basically that's it. That's him done. That's him retired, basically. But we shall see. It's another one of those situations where, you know, every so often, possibly every so often somebody goes pop and they just lose their shit, which does happen sometimes. Or it could just be another act in that never-ending play that is a lot of the shit that goes on in this environment on the internet. Yeah. I can't think of much else to talk about tonight, guys. So I think I'm going to wrap it up a little bit early. I think we've made some good points about the current news obsession. Yeah, as I like to do, we've dug a bit behind just the general details of what's occupied people's attention via the media, primarily the news, and looked at a bit more of the longer agendas and narratives that are potentially highly likely to be connected into recent events, last week's event.
I learned something interesting tonight. The Chinese Year of the Rat. Apparently, the Chinese calendar, when it comes to the animals, is based on where Jupiter is, which sign Jupiter is in each year, because it takes 12 years for Jupiter to go around. And that is what establishes, it's when Jupiter is in Sagittarius, I think, yeah? And so that's the Year of the Rat. Jupiter is in Sagittarius, like it was when the Chinese New Year started. Yeah, but apparently it goes around with Jupiter, yeah, around the constellations, deciding which year it's going to be. Yeah, so it's a 12-year cycle. I thought that was interesting. I mean, that is weird that you should measure, you should name your years after a 12-year cycle of Jupiter. It just seems a bit odd, different.
Certainly awareness of the solar system and the movements of the solar system.
Yeah, and their months are lunar. So that you can tell what time of the month it is just by looking at the moon, which makes sense.
That does make sense.
Yeah.
Oh, you've got to be careful making sense. You'll be accused of Satanism, worshipping demons in the sky because, it's a dome. There's nothing out there. It's just demons that are messing with you. Sorry, I'm being sarcastic and silly again. New being, hello. I meant to mention for you, because I mentioned this to you in a chat on Steve's show a few weeks ago about Pink Floyd, and I said to you about combining Wizard of Oz with Pink Floyd The Wall, and I was mixing it up. It's not Pink Floyd The Wall, it's Dark Side of the Moon. And Days did type in the chat at the time Dark Side of the Moon, but I just didn't register. I was too busy chatting away. But yeah, what I was talking about with that odd synchronicity of, if you put the movie Wizard of Oz on visually, mute the audio, and listen to the album Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd, and they work together in a really strangely interesting way.
The Dark Side of Oz.
That's it. Yeah, thank you. I remember now. You did put it in the chat, and I was too busy tapping away. It just didn't click. So thank you for mentioning that, and I'm glad I saw New Being in the chat, so I got the chance to explain it. And
a really good television series from 1979 called The Quatermass Experiment, where something is doing a massive max on loads of people that go and gather at Stonehenge, Ringstone Round, or other ancient megalithic sites. Loads of young people called planet people turn up at these things, and then they get zapped by an alien. But they don't recover like Max, because they're not working for the government. And there's a line in it I said just before where John Mills, who's playing Quatermass, says, "I think this alien is harvesting the human race." And I thought, good, that'll make a good clip for some video.
Especially if you watch it. I remember watching it when I was a kid, and I watched the little connection that you put up earlier, and it's done classic TV style. You've got him say that dramatic line with just total silence behind him, and once he's finished, you hear a girly scream and then a really loud blare on an organ. It's just a classic TV theatre projection.
Yeah, some girl watching in the studio is so shocked by what he's just said, she just faints.
It is a good little storyline. I remember I said to Gary in the chat earlier, I remember watching it on TV when it was originally broadcast, and I thought it was quite scary, but it also fascinated me, and it was one of those little stepping stones in my youth that encouraged me to look into information like that around those kind of subjects.
Whereas for most people, they put that meme out there that, you know, messing around with megalithic ring stones is like, you know, aliens and it's dangerous. That's the message they want to give to people. Yeah. It's
or that it's Satanism. Yeah, that's one of the whatever I could rant about it. It's one of those buzzwords that's just been stuck in this media for the last few years. Yeah, it's what's the word for it, or the phrase for it? And I can't remember it off the top of my head now, because I always used to rant about the phrase conspiracy theorist. It's a spell in a loose use of the word spell. Yeah, it's a way of shutting down people's thinking. They say you're a conspiracy theorist, and in other words, your thought, your discussion, your consideration is meant to just stop there. It's the same as them saying, stop it, stop talking, stop thinking, I don't want to hear it. And in the same way now we get Satanist. You want to talk about or bring up information that some people are uncomfortable with or have a difficulty with, and they just go, you're a Satanist. Shut down the conversation. Yeah.
Same applies to the word occult and anarchy.
Yeah. And one another shout out again for Scott Webb, the one he mentioned in his video the other day, transformational. Yeah, it's one of the buzzwords for the state's propagandas. Everything's transformational. Yeah, anyway, I could rant about buzzwords and phrases for hours. So I think that's a good point to wrap it up. I've just seen in the chat.
I've got one last link. I sent this to somebody on the Skype. Yeah, it's Gurdjieff's little story of the magician, 2 minutes long. Yeah, and basically what he says in it is that the magician has got everybody asleep, all these sheep asleep, and what he's managed to do is convince them that being asleep is the best thing for them. Yeah, and that he doesn't mean them any harm, and yeah, it's just the allegory of the magician and the hypnotized sheep. Yeah, remember, he wrote this back in the 1950s. So
most people are content with. Well, I'm not saying a lot of people are content with comforting lies.
Yeah, but did you remember the story I once told about? I was coming home from I was going from London to Cambridge on the train, and like out of 40 people, 38 of them were almost physically asleep. Like they were daydreaming, head against the window, eyes shut. You do that now, you've got 38 people awake on their phones. And look at them in terms of computers. They used to be turned off while they was in sleeping mode. Now they're actually turned on. Now, even if they're only turned on to a silly picture on a screensaver, at least there is that mental activity taking place.
Yeah, but it's being hijacked.
Exactly, but it's a hell of a step, man, to have all those people not woke, but waking up, actually using their brains, which means the brain is like a stomach. It gets hungry, and they're going out there wanting something to feed that mental hunger every day. And so,
feed your head, as the Dormouse said.
And of course, the alternative is to actually just sort of try and get everybody back to sleep again. But I think that genie is out of the bottle, yeah?
Yeah.
But things like the flat Earth, they are a vision of that blanket of sleep coming back up over everybody. Yeah?
Yes,
because
I agree.
Because we definitely have a connection with the Earth, and we base every night. Yeah? We reconnect with the Earth. Yeah. And so if there's any waking up to do it, it sort of has to be done en masse. Obviously, you're going to get a spread of people more awake and less awake. But the bulk have to move up as well. Otherwise, the ones who are most awake kind of become disconnected. Yeah.
Another element of the possible subtle connections to the coronavirus, the crown virus, links into the solar activity at the moment. It's starting to pick up a little bit again. The last few weeks, there's been a couple of little. They're not actual spots because they're not generating the usual field that is what they would normally call a spot, but it is a spot, yeah. That looks like it could be the beginnings of solar cycle 25 starting to build up. So I wondered about whether part of the the subtle connections to the crown virus thing is again to do with that solar cycle connection, where they are, I know this might, whatever usual kind of obtuse connections that I make, but it might be them externalizing the acknowledgement that we're now beginning that next cycle. So they are connecting the beginning growth of the sun's power again, which affects our thinking. Doesn't just affect the weather here, it affects our biology and it affects our thinking.
Emancipate, he said something about this. He said something about this earlier on about keeping people asleep, or what was it? But that's exactly what it does, because, you know, using the word coronavirus, anybody that starts looking into the global weather is controlled by the sun is very soon going to come up against the phrase coronal mass ejection. And they see that corona word and they go, oh, I don't want to know about that. Oh no. It's a little bit of fear there that they're placing in people's minds to attach to that word. And that word is one of the first words you're going to come across if you start digging into the weather, and the global cooling and the grand solar minimum.
It also refer to like the unified consciousness, the crown of thorns, you know, like that's why
I took it as being the egg, because for the way they indoctrinate a lot of people, they did to me when I was younger, that concept of the self is within here only. Western medicine, or true for most of the world now, that kind of attitude that your self, your intellect, your cognitive abilities, etc., your ability to think is all about what's in your brain, inside your cranium. So it's the crown kind of connection, that your egg, your being, the everything that is you is only what's in here, and it's part of that narrative that they've been pushing for a long time now, that the sense of consciousness is phenomena of the material that makes up your brain, materialism connection. So if they get you to have that kind of viral impression or infection within your crown chakra, then it is assaulting that unified being, or that sense of the connection that you get of having that unified consciousness. Trying to infect people's ability to become whole beings, rather than them continuing with the entrained program of you're only a left brain thinking, egotistically based materialist that is convinced that any thoughts going through your head are just purely electrical phenomena and nothing else. Do you see what I mean? It's dragging people back into the standard indoctrination thinking. Anyway,
you're a wistful artistic dreamer that's not going to achieve anything. So just like our better's got on with it.
Don't illuminate your crown chakra, otherwise you'll become infected. Just the concept that go in that direction. I'm only doing that kind of motion because the energetic body goes that way. So your crown chakra is like the pinnacle of your generated field. So if they give people that fear that if you go anywhere near the crown, the corona, it's something dangerous, something risky. So it's very I was going to say subtle again, but it's not so much. Yes, it's subtle, but it's the fact that it attacks a very deep root connection in people's thinking, because most people wouldn't even be able to have that concept of that's what it is referring to, or possibly referring to. They wouldn't even make that kind of connection because they're not given the kind of education and information that would help them think about things like that. If it's a sneeze, it's a materialist thing. And anyway, that is a good place to wrap it up. A quick say hello as well to Hive Mind Concussion in the chat. A constant state of fight or flight keeps our cortisol levels high, making us unable to physically sleep and mentally ill. Stress and adrenal fatigue and insomnia and that constant need for the next hit, which is that kind of device addiction. I know, like you're saying, Gary, it shows that they're awake and their mind is active, but that activity is being hijacked by the addiction to the constant feed of the blip, blip, blip of the machine. Press button, I get a banana. Press button, I get a banana.
The fear of missing out.
Yeah.
No. I remember Kip said this as well. See, like the social media. Well, Kip said it. The fucking social media feeds. They spin round the same way like a one-armed bandit and a puggy machine, we call them now.
Yeah.
But the way they spin round, it must be a hypnotic effect.
Yeah, and the scrolly uppy thing. It's like you're pulling the arm on the one-armed bandit. Yeah, you scroll up, what do I get? Scroll up, what do I get? Yeah, it's that surprise effect. Yeah. Just like
it also offers a certain amount of empowerment because you're scrolling it down like a cat, with its paws.
Playing with it, yeah.
You're dominating it. It gives you something that you can dominate on a small scale. Yeah? A Corona as well. It's cigars. I forgot to mention it though. I mean, pretty much everything has been given the name Corona.
I've got a feeling that was a reference to the size of the cigar. A Corona meant it was like a certain size and thickness.
No, there's a little crown. If you screenshot, the cigars have got a little crown on them. But like I said before, Corona can be a heart as well. It's almost Corazon or Corona. Corazon is heart. Corona is, I don't know. Yeah.
I have smoked them before, mate, but I thought it was just referencing the size of them, not a particular brand. But it's obviously a particular brand. Other brands are available. Smoke responsibly. Anyway, yes, let's wrap it up at that. Thanks for joining in, guys. Thanks to everybody that's tuned in to watch us live, and thanks to the time travelers who'll watch after live when it's a video on YouTube. As far as I know, there is no scheduled reality chat this Wednesday. Peter's obviously still getting himself sorted, moving house and everything, so it's not on this Wednesday. If it does, obviously you'll see it pop up in your feed or whatever. And I'm not sure if Steve's going to be back for Thursday night because he's been traveling. He's off in the Mediterranean. So I don't know if Steve's show's going to be on the Thursday night. It might be. Check and you'll find out. And I know Jeff's going to be broadcasting soon. Which particular channel? Jeff Censored Live or just Jeff Censored? But check both of them. You'll see them. Subscribe to both of them. Yeah, because
incidentally,
it's a jump channel based on whether he's got strikes and things like that.
Incidentally, the word corona is related to the word curved. It basically means curved, anything curved. Yeah. Right. Latin it became crown, but before that it just means something that's curved. So it's basically the word curvy thing, a curvy thing.
Is it from the Greek originally?
I think it would be.
Just details. Yeah.
Coronis, wreath, Greek. Yeah. Or Greek coron, which means curved. Anything curved. So
like the earth. Well.
I was so tempted to say that meme. Show me that. No, don't start. Don't feed it. Anyway, yeah. Thanks again, folks. Take care. We'll see you again soon. Make sure you wash your hands. Wash your hands.
Corner. Curved.
Don't sneeze. Sneezes are curved. Right, I'm going to click the button.
Coughs and sneezes spread diseases, so always use your handkerchief.